Welcome to the AgEmerge podcast, brought to you by Ag Solutions Network. Your farming challenges are unique, so your practices should be too. We're here to share emerging ideas, build connections, and provoke conversation.
Get ready to improve your soil, your crops, your livestock, and your family's livelihood. I'm your producer, Kim Chase.
And I'm your host, Monty Bottens. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Today we welcome Sarah Martello, CEO and co-founder of Transparency Wise, a company created to help people connect with their food. Using a mobile device, shoppers can scan a Transparency Wise QR code to access enhanced and verifiable product information. Monte and Sarah discuss the opportunities this technology provides in the food chain from start to finish. Coming from a long line of generational farmers and growing up on a small farm in the Midwest has inspired Sarah to help smaller producers get credit for a premium product by implementing technology that provides transparency into all their great production practices. We've got a lot to cover, so let's jump right in.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the AgEmerge podcast. It's a joy to be joined by Sarah. Sarah is with Transparency Wise. She is the co-founder and the CEO of this amazing company that has a lot of applications for farmers. So, Sarah, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So we started Transparency Wise, which was Wise Up Food back in 2020, and it actually was a COVID project, and our objective was different than we wanted to show people more about the food that they were eating, and primarily fresh food. So we focused on where it came from, coupons, recipes, cooking videos, and kind of a story about the farmer, that kind of thing, but nothing verifiable, nothing along those lines. And we had some decent traction, but I think as we started working with producers and seeing what was out there and where the lack of information was, we kind of transitioned into focusing on higher attribute products with claims and information that needed verified, and that kind of segued into who we've become today and our focus on transparency and verification on fresh food products.
So rather than just believing the immense marketing departments of really big corporations that have red barns and two cows on a hillside, you're saying that you're going to tell the consumer what actually happened.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we've been using kind of the tagline recently, you got claims, then prove it, and that's really what we're after on the front end with the consumers. The consumer wants more information about the things they eat and drink. And if, they're buying a higher attribute product, they want to know about it, and they want to know that it's real. Because consumers, one thing that COVID brought out in everybody is a distrust of information out there. And the problem in the food industry, it's really hard to find that information if you can find it at all. So just the lack of transparency and the lack of access to information, is really it's hard for the consumer. So we want to make that easy. We want to connect to real information, real data, and pull that over for the consumer, and build that trust with the brand and the producers behind that brand.
So most people, Sarah, were wearing sweatpants and watching Netflix during COVID. I think this is pretty interesting how you decided let's develop a blockchain company for food attributes. That's definitely different than what most people did. So congratulations to that. So talk to us a little bit about, maybe we just need to start from the basics. What is blockchain? I've heard it. It sounds cool. We think cryptocurrencies when we hear blockchain. Maybe walk everyone through what it is, how it works, the basics first.
So blockchain is a ledger, if you will, a distributed ledger that once you enter data into the blockchain, it can never be altered. So, it provides the platform for the exchange of information between, and it could be permissioned, between supply chain participants and even consumers, that, they can verify where the product came from, the steps that it took to get to where it's at today, and even the verification points behind any underlying certifications that's out there. So, it provides a platform to establish that trust with the consumer, and a differentiator with brands and producers that are going the extra step to be transparent, to do things that are real, instead of slapping a sustainability label or whatever the hot thing at the moment is, climate smart, on a product label, and have no definition or meaning behind it.
So if all this, so there's two parts really. It's getting the information into it, and then it's analyzing or pulling the information back out of it. So how does the attributes or the information go into this open ledger? How does that process work?
You from a basic standpoint, or what we've learned along the way on trying to get people onboarded onto blockchain?
Well, it sounds like there's some great stories behind this, so I'll let you take it and give us all the information.
Well, like when we started down this route, we had no idea the difficulties it would be in implementing it on a producer side. And so our blockchain partners, IBM Food Trust, which they've been absolutely amazing in this whole process. They're one of the leaders in the food and ag space in blockchain, and they've been doing this a long time. And they work with all the major retailers and a lot of brands, at least on the back end traceability. So they've been a tremendous support in trying to get this implemented. But they're not experts in the cattle supply chain. So, that we're kind of on our own in that respect. And so they didn't know the cattle supply chain. And, we had to figure out a lot of solutions along the way, because in order to get the data into blockchain, you have to, one, collect the data. So you have to figure out a way to get all the supply chain participants to be collecting data in some kind of software platform, if you will, that we could then transcribe into something that we could then distribute to the blockchain. So that was very challenging, because that, being in the ag space, as long as you have, nobody uses the same technology platform or has the same way of doing things. And something we found out really quickly is the players that in the tech space of the ag industry, they don't want to play together. So if you want to get data from this person, it's like, no, that's my data. And a lot of these tech companies have pushed back and said, no, this is our data. It's not the producer's data. Therefore, you cannot get access to it to put it on blockchain, which was a little astonishing to me. So we had to figure out ways to either onboard the producers or participants in the supply chain with other technology to that will work with what we're trying to do, and just work through a lot of issues, from the cow calf side all the way to the producer, and just find better technology solutions for them. And so what we ended up having to do was we built customized data modules for the supply chain that basically operated as a data collection source for places where there was nothing out there to collect the data. And so it presented a lot of challenges, but what was very encouraging about the whole thing was the producers and the processors, everybody that we were working with was really committed to finding a better way to do things, and they wanted to be transparent, and they really wanted this. And so that's what really made it worth it, end of the day, because it was a lot of work, but to have people that are really wanting to make a change and make a difference and stand out from everybody else out there. That was truly amazing.
So, can we dive into that a little bit? Because I'm just thinking about it. There's software programs that do a lot for breeding and genetics, knowing parent lines and those kind of things. Then there's software programs for financial components and also for health events and recording when weaning or vaccinations and those kind of things. But I'm thinking if this is a consumer facing product, I'm not so sure how interested a consumer is in the weaning weight of a calf, right? So I'm sure there was
Absolutely.
other attributes you had to gather that are normally not being collected. What did you include, and and what did you exclude, and what did you have to go ahead and add, right? And I'm thinking that if a farmer's already doing one thing in one platform, they hate to have to re-enter it twice, right? So
Mm-hmm.
probably created some APIs to automatically fill data and such. Man,
Mm-hmm.
that had to be quite a process. Go walk us through some of those things. Data that you just don't need, data that you can include that they're already doing, and additional data you had to get from producers.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, there's so much data, and none of the data is consolidated or, there's all these different platforms to collect it, and there's not really good tools out there to consolidate it and make sense and, the analytics behind it. So, we're collecting all this data, and it's like, okay, our end goal, at least at this point, is to pull it over to the consumer and give them the information they want. And so, initially we just stuck with, source, age, breed, and, primary dates, and then feed. And so our pilot program was with the organic cattle ranch. And so, we were hooking up with the different organic certifications that covered that end product as well. So those were the high data points that we were trying to execute. And then the thing that everybody finds interesting, they're like, so you were tracking, so this steak, I could scan it and see the exact cow. And it's like, no, like, I think that's too granular. I don't think consumers want that. But also, I think that the cost to do that, it just is not practical. And for what benefit? So what we came up with and what we thought was important was to keep the cattle lots together, where you have all the same data points. If they were born in the same, spring to the same, herd, they are fed the same. If all those data points are intact, they're a lot. But that lot then begins, as you could imagine, start splintering as, like, the cattle progress and go into certain phases of the supply chain at different times. Then that lot splinters and whatever, but you still have a group that, are maintaining that same original data as a whole. So that was the most efficient, cost-effective way that we could break it down, where it made sense, but still maintain that integrity. Obviously, if there's fallout from certain programs or vaccinations or whatever, those would have to get pulled out of the lot as well.
Yeah, so that's interesting how you do that, and the consumer then can still see, yes, what breed it was. It was born in March of 21, or and was processed at this plant on this day.
Mm-hmm.
And, he or she can see that and know what farmer it comes from and what feed it ate. So now the question is how do you verify what's going into it is true, right? How do you prevent the fibbing? Now in the organic program, that there's certifiers, and
it's
every
only
minute of every day, right? But it's good. How
and
do you verify?
And that's the next challenge that we're really dealing with is, okay, so we could get the data, but how do we verify it? And, you know, the second phase of all this that we're working on right now is trying to figure out what systems we could implement that have better verification in place. You know, how can we like enable,
Or
geolocation?
or partner with a certifying organization, right? Like, savory or grass-fed, organic, or whatever label.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard. That world, a lot of them, the certifiers, they don't want to work with you, so that makes it kind of difficult. But there are some that do and that are committed to transparency. So that's encouraging at least. But in IBM, we're working with them a lot right now on how to really build out something that is verifiable, and how do we better collect data, and whether that be geolocation tracking and implementing more NFC RFID chips and all that, where it's data, it's not input, like, because a lot of what we found when we started going down this route was there was a lot of manual input, like from the cow calf all the way to the producer, just manually inputting data. And that was the most surprising thing to me of this all, is that, holy crap, like how are we going to like implement this and then scale it? So
Plus you're putting in that data with dirty gloves on or cold fingers, and it's on your best notepad with a pencil that broke. And yeah, it's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. So yeah, that's great. And I think that that'll just develop over time. And yeah, smart tags on cattle are certainly a way to do that. And if you look at the application you probably started with one of the hardest things there is, right? Application of other things, as far as in grain or commodity crops, there's a lot of automated yield monitoring and geospatial gathering. Their produce is very regulated already with tremendous paper trails. So you probably started with one of the hardest things to track from field to fork. So everything else is going to be easy, right?
Well, you'd hope so, but I'm sure each area has its own intricacies that we'll figure out. But
so now this is how you got the data into the open book, and I don't understand why it's so hard to. There's a lot of resistance to transparency, isn't there?
absolutely.
Why is everybody so afraid of the truth? And but they are. That'll change over time. So now on the output side, how does a consumer utilize this, or a distributor, a buyer, use the information from what you've developed?
So we have a QR code that's put on the product package that is then tied to the product, but there's also a traceability code that is printed on that product that basically then pulls you over to that actual traceability record for the products that's supported by that. So that we're dealing with a situation with the organic beef ranch, Riverwire, that they just found out that they're going to be getting into retail, which is awesome. So we're trying to figure out, how to do it, because they're doing it in the case. So we don't have product packages. So we don't have a package per se to put the QR code on. But we're working with IBM and also the retailer on how to execute that. And there's multiple ways to do it. They're always going to be printing off, the price and all that on the butcher paper. So we could utilize that to transfer over that traceability information. So I think it'll be really cool to actually see that in retail as well.
I just had a thought. You could imagine char lines on a steak where you could laser etch in the QR code,
Oh my gosh. So
That's
we
going
had
a
this,
little too far.
we had this idea, and this was a call we had with a restaurant and IBM, and they wanted to do the blockchain traceability in their restaurant. And we're like, how the heck would we do that? Like, how would, like, the diner has like a steak in front of them. Like, how will we do that? Because it's a different lot every week, like, and somebody came up with, like, the grill char thing on top that could have the lot ID code. And I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, wouldn't that be cool? So I don't know.
I have one of the sayings I have is there's a lot of ideas, but there's not a lot of good ideas. So
Yeah.
not every idea is good. But yeah, it's interesting. How do you do that? And I think, that'll probably long term, there'll probably be some sort of sensor in the restaurant that follows that. Has a visual ID on that plate from the kitchen out there, and a person will automatically, pop up in their augmented reality plate,
Mhm.
picture of Bessie and where she came from. But anyway,
I don't think
I don't know
consumers
how
want
much,
to.
how
Yeah.
much information is needed, right? That's like you said, by lot versus by animal. That's granular enough, But who knows? Maybe we'll need more in the future.
Yeah, I mean, what we've really heard, like, feedback so far from customers is they want to know where it came from. They want to know more about the production practices, and then any kind of claims or verification or certification on the product. They want to verify that. They want to be able to access the data points behind that. So that's really kind of the direction we're focusing on next.
The AgEmerge podcast is brought to you by Ag Solutions Network. The ASN team is hands-on, digging in and invested in regenerative agriculture. Along with the proper plant nutrition and biologicals to boost your soil microbiome, we provide the ideas and implementation guidance to support you on your soil health journey. So stop farming the same way and contact Ag Solutions Network today at asn.farm.
So to date, then, what kind of impact do you feel you've made with what you've done?
I think at this point, we've really laid an amazing foundation to, start collecting the critical data points, also the solutions to onboarding on blockchain. And I think that foundation provides the segue to building this better agri-food ecosystem where we could verify, the underlying production practices along the way. And I think that sets the stage for these producers to, have a higher attribute item that could then go into, like a brand is interested in or a retailer is interested in, and they feel comfortable that, this product is what it says it is. And I think that's part of the problem right now with, regenerative ag, or, people doing better practices, is how do you compensate them for that? How do you make it worthwhile? And it's really hard, because they're spending more money, and they're really trying to create something that is sustainable both economically and environmentally. And on the other hand, you have, Wall Street and retailers and brands out there saying, oh, we want to be, carbon neutral by whenever, and we're committed to all these things. But, at the end of the day, what's happened in the past is those producers get screwed over. What they might get paid, for their better product is notational. At the end, doesn't really matter. It's not adequately compensating them. So we're trying to put together a system where, we could hook up these better producers that are doing these better practices with the brands and retailers that really are committed to doing that, and making sure it's economically feasible for those producers to continue those practices.
So really in the future, there'll be you think this will lead to a bigger difference in price between different attributes, correct? Instead of what's happening today, is a lot of those things are just getting lumped into similar categories, I would assume, right? So this is going to allow a hyper differentiation. So the lower will be low and the higher will be high. Is that kind of where you see it going, and more levels in between of pricing?
Well, yeah, I mean, so we just came back from the annual meat conference in Dallas, beginning of March, and everybody is talking about sustainability and climate smart and the premiums associated with it. And the number was thrown out there multiple times that, consumers will pay up to 24% premium for a sustainability or a climate smart claim. And basically what that boiled down to in most of their definitions was like a 10% reduction in emissions. However, how that reduction in emissions was being assessed was a little bit all over the place. So, the other thing that, everybody was talking about, well, the consumers want traceability and transparency. And I'm like, okay, so you have consumers that want sustainability, want something real, and they want something that they could verify, but then nobody could even really say what they're doing to justify their climate smart label on their package. So, there's just like a lot of stuff out there that's out of sync. And I do believe that consumers are willing to pay a premium for it, but we have to kind of filter through the noise with a lot of these companies that, they're just finding the climate smart, sustainable, regenerative as a way to like slap a label on something so they could get more money in their pocket. It has nothing to do with, really facilitating any like change at all, in my opinion.
Well,
and don't get me wrong, there's some good players out there too.
But when all of a sudden you can command a 24% premium, there's a lot of reasons to slap a label on something. I mean, that's big money, isn't it?
Absolutely. And what we're trying to do is to make sure if there's that premium on it, that premium flows downward to the producers and encourages those practices. So we're trying to put brands together with producers that are aligned in this mission to, create a better way of doing things.
That's very interesting. And really, if you look at what consumers are willing to spend for only a 10% reduction, that is pretty amazing, isn't it? I think over time that demand will increase, but yeah, it's shocking for that difference. You're exactly right. So, that is fascinating. So, beef is where you've started. What else is on the menu per se at this time and that you're looking at?
So we work with several regenerative ag companies, and we're doing something really cool with Liz Haney and Russell Hendricks with Soil Regen, and they in their certification program. And they are really committed to helping farmers transition to better practices, and they're committed to transparency. And so we are onboarding them onto blockchain and their certification process onto blockchain that will then be pulled over for the consumer facing application. And I think it will be really, really amazing pulling them into IBM's ecosystem and basically opening the door to access to these retailers and brands that are wanting to buy from and source out these regenerative products. So I really think that this really could be a game changer in the sense that certification companies as a whole are not in the business of being transparent, as crazy as that sounds. And I think if we could get consumers to start thinking like, holy crap, I could scan this and I could actually see what was verified behind these claims. This is amazing. They're going to start asking questions to those other certifications out there and those other claims, like, why can't I get access to this information? What does it mean? Like, what does, animal welfare certified, what does that mean? So, I'm really hoping that, we're kind of starting a movement into better ways of doing things and transparency. And, if you have a better product, then prove it.
That's awesome. And so where are you at now from, a commercial release? What's the roadmap look like between today and full scale charge for your company?
So our first phase is complete. We're in the second phase of building up, to implement an additional verification elements, and then building out additional solutions for places that we found missing gaps in the supply chain. And our goal is to, one, make traceability something that is economically feasible for producers. Because right now, like, if somebody was wanting to go down the blockchain route, like, they're going to probably get quoted a lot of money for very little benefit, if you will. So we're trying to make it economically feasible and provide the most benefit to producers and consumers alike. And in my mind, providing that additional benefit is, so we're collecting this data. Let's consolidate this data and make it actionable for the producer. Let's connect those pieces of, that lineage of that cow all the way to the grading, so he can make more actionable decisions and breeding decisions based on the data. And also you could take that further down to the retailer, where, this retailer is wanting to source out, a product that has X, Y, and Z attributes. They could see what's in their pipeline available to them and what's coming. So I think it opens up the supply chain, and it really facilitates a much more collaborative environment, and just drive efficiencies. And then, from a food recall standpoint, I mean, you're in a whole different realm. You're taking like a recall that could take 2, 3, 4 days to like 4 seconds. What if a consumer had the ability to like see their lot number and then go into the app and enter that in and see if their lot number is affected? No more guessing, no emptying out your fridge unnecessarily. So, we're trying to build those solutions where, we got the data. Let's maximize the utility of the data for the participants.
Yeah, there's just a myriad of applications. I love that as far as for consumer, fears of food recall. That's a great example where you could just scan what you have and know if that it's affected or not. And that's a fantastic application for this. Any other applications that you see where this could be used, and really, instead of being a novelty, where it would become something that the consumer would just do inherently every time?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that we could really scale it and, bring on more producers and all throughout fresh food. And, my passion is that those producers that are doing better practices. If you're a commodity practice and you want to do the same thing that you were doing 20 years ago, good for you, and we'll still support your product, but as far as like traceability and blockchain, it's not for you probably. But if you have a better product that has, better practices behind it, then, let's help drive that value of it. And, there's so many cool things that people are doing right now. And it's we're at such a cool time. I mean, even the government's taking notice to, what's going on, and, whether or not it's real that they really want to support this and really want to facilitate, better production practices and climate smart, whatever, I guess to be determined on how much is real. But there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of money that's being thrown out there to it. So I'm really hoping that could drive all this further than we'd otherwise be.
So how does a producer farmer get involved and get started with you?
Just call us up and we'll figure out how the best way to onboard you into our system.
Okay. So it's a case-by-case basis at this moment versus an online automated setup process.
Yeah, at least on the blockchain side it is. If you just have a retail product and you want to use our platform, yeah, you could self-serve that aspect of it.
Okay, very good. How involved is that process to get set up, started, and going
for blockchain?
Yeah,
it depends on where you are in the supply chain and what technology you're using. So the good thing is, like, once we onboard, a certain software platform or technology or whatever, we already built that API. It's minimizes the amount of work we have to do the next time. So, as we scale this and work with more data providers and whatnot, I think it will become much easier. Right now we're still dealing with, different software companies that don't have APIs built or, that kind of thing, where then we'll have to figure out alternative solutions on how to deal with the data.
Mm-hmm. So dust off your crystal ball now. And in 10 years from now, paint the perfect picture of what you'd like to see happening in the industry and also with transparency wise. What's it going to look like?
I mean, I really hope that we could have built a better way of doing things, and that drives value up and down the supply chain and primarily to the producers. Like I come from, a long line of farmers, and my dad, 4th generation farmer, and he was the first one, from in the generations that farming was no longer profitable for him to do it full time. We still grew up on a farm and he had his hobby farm, but he had to have a full-time job, and same with his 4 brothers. And, to me, that is my passion behind what I do is, if we don't make a change now to make, what we're doing to the land sustainable for years to come and profitable. Like farming, nobody's going to be a farmer. It's just going to be a commercial operations. That's the only ones that can afford to do it. So I'm really after, what can we do to add, profitability, sustainability to the producers out there, especially the smaller ones. How can we make it worth their while and keep them in the business? So, that's my ultimate goal, but that entails connecting the supply chain and connecting them to resources and technology that facilitates that. If consumers are demanding that and brands and retailers want to source out that stuff, then we need to connect the dots along the way and provide them access to that pipeline.
Yeah, and that's the key. That's where the hard work is, right? I mean, just constantly trying to get that in there. And thank you for the trail you're blazing, right? It's hard work to be the first one doing this and getting it to work. And that's it really needs to be done. And I'm glad to see that it's happening because, like you said, if we can connect these dots, people will vote for a more regenerative, resilient system. And I'm excited about that. Would love to see how, we can work together, on our farm, instead of just being the small direct to consumer where we have to rely on our brand and our story to drive the product sale, where people almost have to personally know us to know the value that we're creating. This is a way to multiply that by thousands of times in order for everyone to intimately know our story, our location, with far less effort. Is that a good way to say that? I mean,
absolutely. And, I just getting those producers access to the brands and retailers that want to source out those products, I think is key. And then providing value downstream back to the producers for it.
so rather than having to reinvent the distribution channels by going direct to consumer and a farmer doing shipping and delivery and all that stuff, it's okay, I've created the higher value, and this is the way we're going to be able to preserve it within the currently very efficient cost structure processing and very efficient supply channels, and still be able to get a premium out of the product, correct? Rather than having to reinvent the whole downstream from the farm.
Absolutely. And I think, my hope is, 10 years from now, that this will just be the new norm, that retailers and brands, they will only source out products that are better, and that will force change to the producers and the commercialized farms that refuse to change. So I'm hoping that this, really facilitates a movement for the better. And so we could quit slapping meaningless labels on crap that don't mean anything.
But it's natural.
Yeah. What does that
natural.
mean?
So yeah, it's a good point. Better information is going to basically eliminate the laggards, and everyone else will elevate to a higher plane of production that's better for everyone. And so yeah, that's pretty amazing. Bottom line, what you're accomplishing there. So okay, so surprises along the way. Personally, what when you went from a COVID project to today, I mean, did you really know what you were grabbing onto when you started this? I mean, this has to be, did you really know what you were getting into when you did it?
Oh, no, probably not. So my background is, I was a tax attorney. That's my background. And I had my own practice for about 8 years that I built up into several different locations. And, but I got really burned out with like the really long hours and the stress of it all. And, I kind of transitioned to like in-house counsel and then consulting for agriculture and technology companies. And when COVID happened, it kind of shut everything down. And it was kind of like, okay, what am I going to do now? Like, I really don't want to go back into practicing law full time. So, we came up with this idea, and, I've worked with startups. I've, consulted with technology companies and agriculture. Like, I'm like, oh, this won't be too bad. The thing that obviously I didn't take into consideration, I had no way of knowing, is the complexity that COVID brought into things. It affected the entire agriculture food chain, like everything was messed up, and so we had our first software release in October of 2020, and we were beating down the doors of like brands, saying, hey, look what we have. And brands are like, no, the last thing I want is to sell more of my product. We don't want to do anything that would make our product, like more appealing to the consumer. And we're like, what do we do now? Like, this is crazy, So, we just kept forging along and, trying to figure out like where the value is that we could go to with what we are doing. And and that's kind of how we got into the traceability and transparency, because like I said earlier, COVID opened up a lot of questions in people's mind about what was going on in everything, whether that be the supply chain or whatever. People started questioning things. And they began demanding transparency and traceability and sustainability and all that at record numbers. So, recognizing that that's the direction the consumers are going in. How do we give that to consumers? And that's the other thing. It seems like a simple solution. Okay, well, blockchain traceability. Well, what does that mean? And how do you implement that? So it was a much more difficult road than I anticipated. And then on top of it, you have the whole issue with the tech bubble. It exploded, and all of a sudden, a software developer just out of college is not even considering job offers that are under $200,000. And it's like, how do you scale a tech business, a startup, and when you can't get even an inexperienced software developer for under a couple $100,000? So there were so many different things going on and challenges, and we just kept plugging ahead, and I'm glad we did. I'm glad we stuck it out to get to the other side. But it definitely was challenging, to say the least.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking at being a tax attorney, boy, that's where two worlds combine and double the challenge, right? So you've faced a lot of challenges before, and each one's been different, but the startup is it's just always unique. You never expect what you're going to run into, and it could be worse. You could be in the electronic hardware business in COVID. So always look, there's other opportunities. So
yeah, that's for sure.
no, pretty fascinating. I really, appreciate everything that you and your team have done, and there's a lot of hope for the future. The biggest thing is still going to be getting the information in and directing consumers to or buyers to use it. So that's the mechanisms on the input and the output are the devil's in the details, as they say. So, I wish you the best in making that all happen. There's still a road ahead, I can tell. So, but in our time here together, anything else that I should have asked or brought up today that you'd like to share with the audience?
I don't have anything that's popping into my head, but
Well,
I've really enjoyed just chatting about all these things, and it's nice talking to other people that kind of share the same vision and goals with everything, and really want a better system out there.
yeah, and I really see an application where when we're working with the farmer and you're looking at the inputs they're using, and how much reduced rates of inputs we're able to use, how much reduced rates of tillage we're able to use, the diversity we encourage through cover crops and different rotations, and integrating livestock, all of that's going to come up with a blockchain soil value because of this connection between healthy soil, healthy plants, animals, and humans and ecosystem. All of that's connected, and blockchain is going to definitely be a part of that.
Absolutely. We're working on something just what you described right now. So you're right on.
And, then we can, because we've known all of the practices that have gone into a certain product, then we can take and verify the outcome of the product through nutrient density sampling. So where we can, either visual or chemistry, to be able to create a data set, then that there's correlations between grown in this way, we can expect these outcomes, so that way, we can't sample every lettuce head or every steak or every pound of almonds to see what's going on with them exactly, but we can get a much better picture that if they're growing in this way with this irrigation schedule and this nutrients, this cover crop, whatever, we can have a reasonable assurance of this outcome. So I think being able to put that projection portion of it, because of the transparency of the production, that's where we're going to really explode the value of what you're doing. So, and explode the value of what we're trying to do too, because honestly, Sarah, one of our frustrations is we can do a lot of things to create a healthier crop. Let's pick on a commodity first, right? So we can grow corn with 7,500 units less nitrogen, 80% less phosphorus and potassium. We don't have to apply insecticides or fungicides. We have a little bit heavier test weight, more nutrient density, higher food value, for food grade production. And at the end of the day, guess what we get per bushel different? Nothing, because how we're paying for what we're doing with added management and different program products is through cost savings or bushel increases. But there's far greater value in the value parameters that are being created. And all of that's just getting blended into, the commodity space. And this even happens on some specialty crops too, almonds. It's size per pound, right? Ounce or kernels per pound or kernels per ounce. And it's the variety type, shapes, crack, that's it. There's not, this has a better flavor. This has a better protein or fat content, such. So yeah, there's all kinds of value add that we're encouraging and doing, yet unfortunately our farmers aren't getting paid for it. So hurry up, would you? We need
I know.
We need this all tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So, but no, thank you. I appreciate your time and sharing with us. And stick around. I'd like to visit with you a little bit here after the episode and a few other ideas I had for you, and we could bounce some ideas off of each other. But no, again, congratulations to you and your team and all the hard work you've done, and major life changes you've gone through to make it possible too. So
I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed being on.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sarah. Best of luck in future endeavors here with Transparency Wise, and look forward to chatting here again in a little bit.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this conversation today. There are so many great minds exploring ways we can use technology to help support solutions that improve business opportunities for growers. And as always, if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing at Ag Solutions Network, check out our website at asn.farm. And there you can click on links to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. There's a lot of great things happening and always something to learn. Thanks for listening.